is up? Welcome back to the It's Not About Us podcast. This is officially our second episode, which sounds crazy. And it seems like just a week ago that I was like fundraising for equipment, and that happened super fast. And now, well, here we are. On today's episode, I have my longtime friend Jesse. Yay!
Hi.
We go way back.
Oh yeah, way back.
Like second grade.
Yeah, straight up.
Straight up second grade, which would put us at like, what, 7 years old?
Something like that. And now we're what, 22?
22 and 23?
Yeah. I know how old I am. I don't
I'm
know
23.
Yeah. Okay, you're older than me.
We're old.
Yeah.
Man. So yeah, we've seen each other through like the little kid stage, the teenager stage that nobody likes to talk about. Like the early adult stuff. We're still early adults though.
Nobody likes to talk about this stuff, but we're going to.
We're going to. I have a random question for you.
All right.
That I'm going to start off with. What is your favorite worship song right now and why?
So my favorite worship song at the moment is None Like You by Legacy Worship.
And you made me listen to that today.
Yeah, I did. Because it's freaking awesome and I love it. And it's an amazing reminder, even in the dark spots, that God's still in control, that God still reigns, that even in the middle of the night when everything's crashing down around you, that God's still in power. He's still on the throne. He's still as capable of everything and knocking down walls. And it's just, I love it. And honestly, my absolute favorite part of it is just when it's in like the second or third verse, and it says, "Darkness can't hinder your progress, for you triumphed over the grave. Ooh. Your throne is established forever. From Zion, the Lord God will reign."
Whoa, that's dope.
Yeah, I love it. It is my absolute favorite song at the moment, and I go back to it all the time when I'm feeling great, when I'm feeling not so great. Yeah. It's amazing.
That's super cool, and that like reminds you of like, this is how big God actually is. Yeah. You know, because like I like to put God in a little box. I'm like, okay, we're gonna put you right here, you know, and God's like, nah, like I'm this big.
He doesn't like boxes, as I've discovered over and over and over again.
Yeah. And speaking of how big God is, you're about to go to Mexico.
Yeah, right. Like in a week, I will be in Mexico. So by the time y'all are listening to this, I'll be there.
Yeah, he'll be in Mexico.
Yeah. I'm going to be in Juarez, Mexico, which
cool beans.
Has a lot of people freaked out, but like I'm not scared. Like,
heck yeah,
what can the cartels and anybody try to do to me? I'm a son of God. Like,
heck yeah, man.
There's nothing that can be done like to stop God, to stop what he wants to do there. We're going to be doing all sorts of awesome things. We're going to be working with the local YWAM base. They've got some construction projects for our construction students to work on. They have a children's home on the base. We're going to be working with the kids in that home throughout the week. And then on the weekends, we're going to get to go off base and go into the community and just evangelize, do some skits, and just talk and pray for people. And it's going to be amazing. And I'm really looking forward to it.
That's so cool. I love it. I love YWAM. I did YWAM myself. And then I pestered you until you went to YWAM.
Yeah, honestly, like the honest truth right there. Like I would not be in YWAM without Davey. So.
Well, I think it's so cool, and I'm super proud. All right, so tell me a little bit about what life was like for you growing up.
Okay, so you met me in second grade, about a month after my parents split up. Okay. I was born in southern Indiana. Parents were together for the first 6 or 7 years of my life, and then things went not great. Mom eventually was like, okay, I need to get my son out of here. And I love my dad to death. Do not get that wrong, anybody. Like,
absolutely.
He's an amazing man. Like, I love him to this day, but honestly, that was like the best thing for us at the time.
Especially for you as a little baby, you know, little kiddo.
Yeah. And that's why she did it. Yeah. So they split up. We moved 3 hours north to this little town of Rensselaer, Indiana. And for the first 3 years, I absolutely hated it. Like, I hated that my parents split up. I hated that I had to move schools. I hated everything about it just because I'm a little kid. I don't want to leave my dad.
Right.
Like, as good for me as it was, I just hated it. And then eventually I was like, oh, this actually is really, really good for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, moved up here, second grade. Elementary school was fine. And then middle school rolls around.
How'd the rolling of middle school go?
The first 2 weeks was okay. And then 2 weeks into middle school, I remember it to this day, I quickly fell downhill. Like, started to, I fell in with the wrong crowd. I was hanging out with people that weren't uplifting me, that weren't pointing me in the right direction. Yeah, 2 weeks in was the first time I can honestly remember swearing. Like I remember specifically that it was like 2 weeks into middle school and I started swearing and all these other things. I can't even remember exactly, but it just kind of went downhill from there throughout middle school and into high school. Started really suffering from depression. And yeah, it was just, I fell into that cycle. I went to church. I lived that double-sided church life.
Right.
I went to church on Sundays, Wednesdays.
When the doors were open,
Yeah.
you were,
Yeah. I went to all the events, but inside, it was like, on the outside, yeah, I looked like a decent kid, but on the inside, I was just rotten.
Yeah.
My heart wasn't in the right place. Like, I didn't really have a relationship with God. I said I did. I got baptized, but it wasn't real.
Gotcha.
It wasn't personal. It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, I knew the stories. I could tell you all about the Bible, but it wasn't in my heart, and that's the important part.
Yeah.
So, going through high school, really dealing with a lot of depression. I was a lonely, miserable person. I had like 3 friends in high school. At that point, in middle school, you switched to being a homeschooler, so
Yes.
we fell out of contact
Yeah, we
for
did
a while.
for probably until near the end of high school.
Yeah, probably from like 6th grade until like right around graduation.
Yeah, because we kind of reconnected right near graduation.
Yeah, I think it was like right around graduation
Yep.
from high school, 2017.
Yep.
Yeah, I just fell into that cycle of just being lonely and miserable.
Yeah.
And my friends knew it, like my 3 friends. They knew that I was like a lonely, miserable guy.
Yeah.
And my friends were not of God. They were very of the world people. Like, I love them to death. Like, I still talk to a couple of them. We still go hang out and all that. Like, they're great guys, but they're just not followers of Jesus. They don't claim to be. They don't act like it.
Right.
I'm not sure what their actual relationship with Jesus is to this day. They, in their worldly view, tried to help. Like, they really did. But they went about it in such a wrong way. The tail end of 2016, senior year, my buddy was dating this girl, and they were plotting behind my back in an attempt to help me out. His girlfriend had a friend who was single and all this.
Gotcha.
And they were like,
that'll fix everything.
Yeah, a relationship will help Jesse.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, totally the wrong move. Like, they were trying to help, but they just made everything way worse. New Year's Day, 2017, January 1st, my buddy's girlfriend sends me a message like, hey, message my friend. She's single and ready to mingle. Like, that is the exact thing. I remember it to this day, exactly what she said.
Wow.
And I thought it over for a few hours, and I was like, I don't know. I think at that moment that was God really trying to reach out to me and be like, don't do this.
Bad idea.
Bad idea. Yeah. And I've always been very, very stubborn.
Yeah.
Like, that's still a thing. I'm super stubborn even now. Sometimes it helps.
Yeah.
But in this specific instance, it did not help. Thought it over for a few hours, and I sent her a message. And then we started talking all day, every day. And I started placing my identity in my friendship with her. And like, I wanted it to be more. I really did. Like, I liked this girl, and she was nice and sweet, and
right.
there was nothing wrong with her. It's just, I put my identity in my friendship and trying to get a relationship with her.
Right, absolutely. And it makes me feel better, and
Yeah. And that worked for about 2 months, and then things started to go downhill. I asked her to prom, and then I got ghosted for a week, and that started causing me to spiral, which, when you place your identity on a person, they're going to let you down.
Absolutely.
Like, you cannot place your identity, you can't base that on a single person, because a human will fail you every time.
Like, that's the one thing we're good at as humans. Like, we mess up.
Yeah. She was an amazing person. She'd lost her phone or something for a week, and we just couldn't talk. And I just, like, because I'd based my identity on her, I really spiraled that week and kind of freaked out. In that month right there, I just got super low. Like, that month leading up to prom, I just started to spiral really, really bad.
Yeah.
I got more depressed than I already had been. I was at my lowest point right there. And it was right after prom, actually. Went to prom. I was at prom for 45 minutes. We had a group, me, her, my buddy, and his girlfriend. It was the four of us. So we leave prom after like 45 minutes because we were cold and miserable.
Yeah. Like,
we go back to my place where we were planning on like playing some games, watching a movie, whatever. Well, then my buddy and his girlfriend leave after like 10 minutes. It was just kind of miserable. So we're like, okay, I'll take her home.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of fell out of contact for a while. And I was just like, okay, maybe this isn't worth it. And I got like super, like, because I'd based my identity on my friendship and relationship status.
And that's so easy to do.
Oh, yeah, it's really easy.
Especially in high school. It's so easy. Like, you start getting along with somebody and you're like, wow, this makes me feel good. So I'm going to place my identity in this entire friendship. And then when the littlest thing happens, you spiral.
Yeah.
You know, and everything gets wonky.
And even having walked through this, I'm not immune to it now. Like, it still happens occasionally. Yeah. I'm just able to catch it faster.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I know how to deal with it now.
Yeah, you're like, hey, let's take a step back. Let's go take that to Jesus and figure out what my head's doing. Yeah. And let's keep going.
It was like for a month after prom, I was just super depressed and stuff. And because I had based my identity on her, it was just, I got super low one night.
Yeah.
And I found a razor knife that I owned, this cheap razor knife, and I put a scar on my arm. Just one. Yeah. But I did that. And that night was over, bandaged it up, and wore long sleeves for a while just to cover it up because I didn't really want anybody to know, because I had shown my best friend at the time in an effort to be like, this is where I'm at. I need help. Yeah. And they looked at me and said, I can't even look at you right now. And that made it worse.
Wow. That added on to the shame. Yeah. That was already kind of starting to be there.
Yeah. I was miserable from that, and I'm like, I need help. And so I tried to reach out to one of my best friends, and they said that to me, and then they walked away, and I felt even worse at that moment.
So now you feel alone and isolated more than what you already did.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was my best friend at the time. Unfortunately, that's another person that I just don't talk to anymore. Yeah. But God has helped me through these things. I don't want to be like, yo, this is where I'm at. No, this is where I was.
Yeah.
It's really low, but like I have to say how low I got to show what God's actually done since then. Yeah, so I started like going to church more and just trying to reach out to people. There were some people from my church that I absolutely love, and they love me. They basically adopted me as another kid.
Yeah. Isn't that the best?
Yeah.
When you're like everybody's kid.
Yeah. My many church moms.
Right? Yeah. Church moms, church dads, they're all great. I love it so much.
Yeah. And they loved me through it. Yeah. They, even when I didn't want to accept it. They were still there, and I was over at their house all the time, and they were just. I was angry and upset and everything, and they loved me through it.
Yeah.
And they showed me what real love is like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was doing okay for a while, but every single time that I looked at my arm and I saw that scar, I would snap right back to that night, that shame, that depression, that loneliness. No matter how good I got on any day, I would look at my arm and I would instantly snap back to that.
Because that was like a reminder of like that low point. And what was the shame that you felt around that?
Yeah, it was shame. Like I was like, oh, I'm horrible. I know better than this. I will never be beyond this. I will not be, and like that was my viewpoint of myself, was like I am somebody who self-harms. Like even though I only did it,
that was you placed your identity in that. Wow.
Yeah, I only did it like once or twice, but it was just enough to anchor me.
Yeah.
It was enough to anchor me into that point where I could not move on from it. And it was around this time that you and I were friends, like good friends at this point.
Yeah.
And you had applied to YWAM.
Yep.
And
YWAM is a missions organization, and YWAM is an acronym that stands for Youth with a Mission. I signed up to do a DTS, which is a discipleship training school, which is you go to whatever YWAM base that you choose. They are everywhere. Literally all over the world, not just here in the States. They are everywhere. And you do 3 months of Bible teaching, classroom things, and then they send you off on a missions trip for about 2 months.
Yeah.
Is what it was at mine. It's super cool. YWAM is an amazing organization. I know for me, it changed my life when I was there. It really changed my outlook on really myself and the Lord and my relationship with Him, and how God looks at me and how God feels about me. What really pressing into the Lord feels like, you know? And so I was super excited about YWAM. I was super nervous about it.
Yeah.
And so I just pestered Jesse for months until he signed up. And
yeah, I really had no interest in doing a DTS whatsoever.
no, he was like, that's cool for you, but no thank you.
Yeah, really. No. Yeah, I was totally against it at the start, and after about a month or two of you just pestering me about it over and over and over again, I was like, fine, I will look into it, just leave me alone.
Because I kept sending you links, and I was like, this is my base, and here are some other ones that you might like, in case you want to look at it.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, it was about that time. It was actually a little bit after that. I had already applied to do my DTS. I had already been accepted. I'm going to backtrack later and we'll talk about YWAM, but so I had applied and been accepted to do my DTS, but I was still anchored in that point. Yeah. I was still like looking at my arm, and I was at work the one day. I was working at a shop here in town, and I was just working, and I kept looking at it, and I'm like, if I'm going to go do this school, I cannot be here. I cannot be anchored in this spot. I can't keep coming back to this. And I was sitting at my workspace, and I was just like, I gotta deal with this. I cannot go and do a DTS with this on my arm. And so I had, in one of the youth groups I had gone to, they'd talked a lot about the healing power of God. And I'm like, yeah, I know this is power. This power is real. I know that this is something God can do. And I know it's something that He loves to do because He cares about us.
Yes.
Like, I had known these things already. And so I was at work the one day, and I just put my hand over the scar, and I prayed for like 30 seconds max.
Right. This wasn't some like go off into your war room and like press in for 3 hours.
Yeah. I was just at work that one day, and I'm like, I put my hand over the scar, and I said, God, I need this gone. I need I need freedom from this. I cannot go forward with this still on my arm. I don't want it just so I don't have to look at it. I want it so that I can go forward and do what you have for me, so I can bring glory to your kingdom. Because even at that point, like, I knew a lot about what God could do and what he wanted to do. And I did. And then I forgot to actually look at my arm at that point. I got distracted because, like, I was at work.
Right.
I couldn't just, like, stop completely. I still had to do my job.
Right.
So I got distracted. I went back to work. And then I get... I was going to say I get back home, but I was actually living with one of my church families at the time. They had adopted me basically for 6 or 7 months before I went to my DTS so that I could afford to go to my DTS.
Hey, yep.
Yeah.
They be expensive.
Yeah. DTS they're an investment, and they're a worthwhile investment.
It's very worth it. But it's a lot of hard work to get to that point, too.
Yeah, I get back to their house after work that night, and I'm making dinner. It was my night to make dinner. And I'm like, oh yeah, I prayed for that.
I'm going to check on that.
Yeah. And I look at my arm, and I cannot find the scar. Like, it is so gone. Like, yeah, it was completely gone. It is gone to this day. And I was just like, I couldn't even say anything because I'm just like, thank you, God. Like,
that's so cool.
And before that point, I used to be able to do what I called my murder glare, where I would just like...
I remember that look.
Yeah. And I can't do it anymore. Literally from that day, like, the murder glare, I would just, like, if I was walking somewhere and I needed somebody out of my way, I would just do this thing with my face where I would just pour all my hate and anger just into my eyes, and it would just be like, people just get out of my way.
It would, like, burn. Burn, like, into your face.
Yeah. And, like, literally from that day, I couldn't do it anymore. Like, I tried for, like, 3 days. I'm like, my murder glare, it's gone.
Where did it go?
Like, that was my superpower. I don't have it anymore. And it was like, it was amazing. And, like, I joked that I missed it, but I really didn't. Like, I was really glad it was gone.
Yeah.
Because, like, it was quote unquote useful, but, like, not actually.
Not healthy.
Yeah, no, definitely not healthy. It was useful for walking around the store faster. And that was about it. But yeah, I couldn't do it anymore. Like, he didn't just take the scar off my arm. He went into my heart and pulled out all that hate, pulled out all that anger. And yeah, it was just awesome.
And that shame too.
Yeah.
Because there was a difference, because I remember when you posted a video on Facebook about it, you were sitting in McDonald's.
Yeah.
You were like, guys, this is weird, but I gotta tell y'all this.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what?
Yeah. Looking back, maybe I should have recorded that in my truck, but, like, whatever.
I mean, you know what? The Lord's timing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That was back when I had my mohawk.
Yeah, it was.
Like,
wow.
Yeah.
What a transformation.
Yeah, honestly. We don't have video going right now, but
we'll get it set up in a couple weeks. It'll be all right.
But that was a long time ago, actually.
That was.
Yeah.
But there was such a giant difference.
Mm-hmm. Like, overnight.
In you, and in, like you said, like, your facial expressions, and really in your spirit and how you interacted with people, even how you interacted with me, and kind of how you interacted with yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
If that makes sense. Because I remember talking to the family that you had lived with before you went to YWAM, and they were like, have you seen Jesse? Have you talked to him? And I was like, no, what do you mean? They're like, he's so different. You have to see him. Like, he's amazing. Like, you have to talk to him right now. They were so excited for what God just had done with you. And they were excited because they saw it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, and
absolutely.
It was such it wasn't just, oh, the scar's gone. It was
deeper than that.
The spirit of anger and the shame, all of that was gone.
The scar was just on the surface.
Yeah.
And God doesn't stop with the surface. He goes into your heart. He goes into your spirit. He goes deeper than you could even imagine. And
that's so cool.
Yeah.
I love Jesus. He's great.
And he didn't stop there. Yeah, that was, like, right before I went to YWAM.
Yeah.
Because, like, I needed to deal with that before I would go, because I knew if I didn't, going and doing a DTS would do nothing.
Yeah.
Because you need to get rid of those anchors. So, yeah, I guess we'll dive into YWAM now.
I love YWAM.
Yeah. So, yeah, like we said earlier, Davey pestered me for a month until I looked into it.
I did.
Yeah, you really did. So I looked into it, and the more I looked into it, the more I'm like, oh, this is something I should do. And at that point, I'm like, okay, so where do I go? And what do I do? Because I did not want to go to the same base you did.
Nope.
Because
that was a rule.
Yeah, well, we never actually talked about that.
That was an unspoken rule.
Yeah. I just decided for myself, like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to the same base that you were.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want anyone to think that, oh, he's just going to follow her.
Right.
Like, I did not want that. We live in a small town. That's how small towns work.
We do. And, like, all of our churches do ministry together. And so it was, we were like, no.
Yeah.
Go find your own base.
Yeah. So I spent some time on the YWAM website, like the main one for, like, internationally. And I'm like, okay, where am I supposed to go then?
Yeah, man.
Because there are literally thousands of bases all over the world. And so for whatever reason, I just felt like the Lord was laying on my heart to go to Texas. And
I remember the first time you said Texas, and I was like, of course, Texas.
So I was just like, yeah, the Lord just kind of laid on my heart to go to Texas.
Yeah.
And so I went on the YWAM website, and I looked at all the bases they have in Texas. And I'm not sure what funky search parameters I typed in, but it only showed me 2 bases in the whole state, and there are way more than that.
I was about to say, I'm like, it's Texas. What do you mean?
There's at least 4 that I know of.
Wow.
At least.
It only showed you 2?
Yeah, it only showed me 2. It showed me Wiley, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas, and El Paso. And my very next thought was, I don't speak Spanish. Like, honestly, that's what it came down to, is I don't speak Spanish, so I'm going to Wiley.
Well, look at the Lord just narrowing it down for you.
Legit. Like, that was my thought process. And then I was on YWAM Wiley's individual website. And so how a DTS works is you have your main course throughout the week. You do different classes every week, just different subjects like biblical overview and hearing the voice of God, missions.
Father Heart of God week.
We did what was called Pure Hearts.
But it was the same thing.
Similar enough, but
it wrecked everybody.
Yeah, in a good way.
Yeah.
In an amazing way. A lot of healing that week.
Yeah.
But so yeah, you do that throughout the week, and then on Fridays we do what we call tracks, which is like your electives. And when I was on the website, I'm like, well, if I'm going to do this, I don't want to just do a classic DTS. I want to do a track. And I looked at the list of tracks that were available, and there was the construction track. And frankly, physically speaking, I'm not built for construction.
That's fair. Yeah.
Like, I was just like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Then there was the photo track, and I'm like, I have no interest in photography whatsoever. And so I didn't do that one. And the next one on the list was Children at Risk, which is focused on women and children in different at-risk situations. They talk about a lot of different topics.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I don't see a reason not to do that one. Wow, so I did that one.
Why not?
Yeah. I was like, I don't want to do a classic DTS. I want to do a track.
Right.
And
we're gonna add the pizzazz.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go a little bit farther.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing that track, and honestly, best decision I ever made. Well, maybe not the absolute best, but it's up there. Like, yeah. So I get down to Texas. Mm-hmm. I'm driving down, and I get there, and I pull into the parking lot, and I go on my tour, and it's January 2020.
Oh.
Yeah, 2020.
That was our YWAM month.
Yeah. Need I say more? No, I'm going to. But like 2020 was
hot mess.
Yeah.
We're just gonna call it a hot mess, but the Lord is good.
Yeah.
And he used 2020.
He really is. In a weird kind of way, I'm grateful for COVID's timing, and I'll get more into that in a minute. So I go down for my DTS, and I'm doing the different weeks, learning about missions, the nature and character of God. go through Pure Heart Week, get a lot of healing from old wounds, because just because the scar was gone doesn't mean there weren't more wounds to deal with. Not saying that there aren't still wounds to deal with.
Because, right, like that's a constant thing that we work on as we walk with the Lord.
So go through that, and I'm doing the tracks on Fridays. And 1 week, for this track, we watch a film by the organization Exodus Cry called Nefarious, which is about sex trafficking. As soon as we watched that film, I was just like, oh, I need to do something. There was a quote by William Wilberforce, who was one of the original fight against human trafficking people.
Really?
Like, yeah, he was one of the originals for it. He said, cool. At the end of the film, they had it put up there, "You may choose to look the other way, but you can never again say that you did not know."
Whoa.
And that quote, that quote hit me like a freight train. And I'm like, oh, yeah, he's right. I know that this evil exists in our world. I know this evil exists in America.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have to do something about it. And so I came up with a plan. I was going to come home from my DTS, and I was going to start doing like awareness nights here in the area. And then
we both had our hotshot plans for after we got home from YWAM.
Yeah.
Our hotshot plans.
And then about a week later, it's March 2020.
Oh.
COVID hit. Yeah. No, COVID hit about a week later.
In case y'all didn't know, there was a pandemic.
Yeah. So that hit about a week later.
Yeah.
And my DTS was like 2 weeks away from going on outreach. So the way DTS works is you spend 3 months in lecture phases, and then, like we said, 2 months on outreach. Yep. We were about 2 weeks away from leaving for Brazil for 2 months.
Brazil, that's what it was.
Yeah, I still wish we could have gone. But at the same time, I'm glad we didn't go.
And why is that?
Because basically the day that Texas shut down, the leadership team at YWAM Wiley set my school down and was like, hey guys, we can't send you to Brazil right now. But we already have all of our students here for the secondary school that we're going to do, called a School of Ministry Development, or an SOMD. And they said, we've already got our students here. We're going to do this anyways. We're going to abide by the COVID guidelines.
Absolutely.
But you guys can stay, or you can go home.
Right, you get there.
Like that we had those two options. We could either go home, or we could stay and do the secondary school.
Yeah.
And as soon as they said it, basically one of the biggest yeses I've ever heard from God right there, clear as day. He's like, you're staying.
I remember that day you had texted me, and you were like, hey, I need some prayer kind of over the next hour. And I was in the airport.
Yeah.
Because my base in Montana, we were about a week away from going on outreach, and there was nothing we could do. We couldn't even do ministry in the local area, because in the area it was just nursing homes, and that was the last place anybody could go. So they're like, hey, we're sorry, we got to send you guys home. And you had texted me, and you were like, hey, so this is the options, and I need prayer. And I was like, all right, let's see what Jesus does then.
The ironic thing is, I've joked a few times that maybe COVID was my fault, because like 2 weeks before everything went down, like they were
I haven't heard this.
They were talking about the secondary school, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I kind of want to do that secondary school, but I don't want to wait a whole year to do it.
This is your fault. All of it. The whole pandemic is your fault.
But then like 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, you guys, you can either go home or you can stay and do the secondary school. And
there were a couple of you guys that stayed.
Yeah, there were a lot of us, actually.
Yeah.
There were like 5 or no, it was like 6 or 7 people from my...
Out of
11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And we joined the SOMD that was starting right there.
Nice.
And so for 2 months, I lived in a house with 8 other guys.
I'm so sorry.
It was an experience, to say the least. I love each and every one of those guys to death.
You got some good guys down there.
Yeah. I still like most of them are still on base.
Yeah.
I talk to them regularly. They're some of my closest friends now. I thank God every day for the fact that I actually talked to my one-on-one and that I had my truck. I was able to go on drives. And
amen, hallelujah.
So when you're a student in YWAM, you're basically assigned a mentor or a one-on-one. Mm-hmm. Basically every week they sit down and they talk to you about like what you're learning, what God's speaking to you.
Good times.
Yeah. During my DTS, I did not utilize my one-on-one like at all.
Oh.
That was my fault.
That's
I should have, but yeah, I didn't open up. I didn't do anything like that. But during my SOMD, I actually opened up to my new one-on-one because I needed to, or I was going to snap.
Yeah, I get that.
And
so COVID was almost healthy for your one-on-one stuff.
Yeah, it was healthy for my one-on-one stuff, but it was also the reason that it needed to be.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, and my one-on-one during that secondary school, I still go and talk to him about things like to this day. Like,
that's awesome.
He's an amazing guy. Like, shout out if you're listening, Phil.
Oh, he talks about Phil all the time. Yay, Phil.
Yeah, Phil. I talk about you. I brag about you sometimes.
Yeah, you're great, Phil.
Yeah, we like Phil.
Yeah. Team Phil.
Yeah, I talked to Phil, and we make it through SOMD. When you're a student, you're also involved with the local outreaches that the base does. During my DTS, I was involved with an after-school ministry.
Oh, okay.
But because of COVID, we couldn't do that anymore. So I switched my local ministry to a ministry that YWAM Wiley runs called Beloved One. Beloved One is an anti-sex trafficking ministry in the Dallas area. It was started by an amazing woman named Chloe. She's awesome. She's like a big sister to me. During my SOMD, I got to get involved with Beloved One. I came up with another plan. Actually, I think it was the same plan. I just expanded on it.
Yeah.
And we were going to an area in Dallas to pray that was just filled with sex trafficking.
Yeah.
So we were on our way there, and the whole way there and back, I was just talking about this plan I came up with that I was going to come home and I was going to start raising awareness for sex trafficking in the Northwest Indiana area.
Yeah, man.
And the whole time, apparently, I've been told she was like, I'm going to throw a curveball at this kid. Like, that wasn't her legit thought process, but like, she was like, oh no. So we get back from this area in Dallas that evening, and Chloe pulls me to the side and she says, hey, Jesse, I want you to come back on staff and join Beloved One. Came completely out of left field. I was not expecting that whatsoever.
Right. You weren't like, here's my plan to become a staff member.
Right. Yeah. I was like, I'm going home. I'm going to work in Indiana.
Yeah.
And yeah, Chloe just hits me with that curveball, and I'm like, I have no idea. I need to pray about this. That's how that worked. And then it was 2 weeks later. It was like the second to last or last week of classes. The COVID restrictions had started to lift a little bit.
Praise God.
Yeah, which it had started before then, which is why I was able to go to Dallas with Chloe. The restrictions had lifted, and we're sitting in class a couple weeks later, and one of the other students looks at me and asks, hey, Jess, are you coming back on staff? And my mouth just said yes. And Chloe happened to be sitting in on class that day.
Oh, no.
And she looks over at me and was like, when were you going to tell me? And I looked over and I said, I just found out.
I just told me.
Like, I found out half a second after I said I was.
And you were like, oh, I am.
Yeah, that's how that worked. And so I go home for the summer, fundraise, and get ready to go back.
Fundraising, man.
Yeah, fundraising. It's an essential part of the missionary life.
Yes, it is.
And it's an important part. Like, God calls you to do it. Like, you work with him, and it's not just like, oh, you're on your own doing this. Like, God truly provides everything. Like, and I've continually experienced that in my life in YWAM, because I've been on staff in YWAM for about a year and a quarter now. I was freaking out because I had no idea, like, where...
You were literally moving to Texas.
Well, yeah, I was moving to Texas, and I had no idea where my monthly support was going to come from. I had no idea any of that. Like, I'd tried to fundraise all summer and it just wasn't working right for me.
Especially we were coming out of a pandemic.
Yeah.
So literally nobody had money.
Yeah. So I went down and I literally, like, it was like 3 days before I left, and I'm like, I don't even know how I'm going to pay for the gas to get down there.
Wow.
And then one of my family that has just been amazing to me for years, the mom just comes up to me and hands me an envelope, and it's full of cash.
Wow.
And that was basically the gas to get down there and like my first 2 months staff fees.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah, I was freaking out because I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. Like, I have nothing. And
yet you were still going to go.
Yeah, I was going to go.
Yes.
Yeah, like, God does that. Like,
yeah, man.
He doesn't call you and throw the money at you 3 months in advance.
Nah.
He just says go, and then you go, and then He makes a way.
Yeah.
It's still like that sometimes. Like, I'm like, okay, God, I have no idea how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And then He's like, here's how I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, legit. Like, there have been so many times where I'm like, okay, God, how am I going to do this? Yep. And then the money shows up. And, yeah. So, it's just, there have been times like that over and over and over. And just walking as a missionary in YWAM, walking in the call that God's placed on my life, he just proves Himself faithful over and over and over and over and over. Yep. And it's just amazing, and I could go on and on and on and on just about the goodness of God and His faithfulness to provide in every situation. And
that's the point of this.
Yeah.
Is to literally be like, God does this, and He does this, and He does this, and He's so great. Yeah,
so I joined staff working with Beloved One, and it's time to start staff training because, like, new staff, they have to go through training. And the whole base is assembled, and they hand out these sheets that list, like, the different departments and who's leading those departments. And we're going through the departments, and we get to the kitchen department, and I think there's a typo. Honest, like, just it's the honest truth. So it lists kitchen managers, and it lists the head manager of the kitchen, and then my name, and then it goes just to the people on the team. And I'm thinking, oh, the label for team members is just supposed to be one higher. I'm not actually a kitchen manager. And
you're like, who's that?
And I go up to the people that are in charge of it, and I'm like, hey, is this a typo? And they're like, no, you're co-manager of the kitchen. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, that was how it started. So, yeah, I've been co-managing the kitchen down there. I've been on the grounds team.
Y'all make some good food, too, is what I hear.
Yeah, I get down there, and God's like, yeah, you're going to help lead the kitchen. And I'm like, cool, no idea how to do that, but
you're like, I'm a chef now.
Yeah, legit. So I get down there, I'm doing that. I'm on the maintenance team, and I'm on the Beloved One team. And that's where it started. For a good 4 months, that's what my life was. And then it gets to December of 2020, and the training director for the base comes up to me in the kitchen one day and was like, hey, we want you to take over leading intercession for our base. Which intercession, for those of y'all that don't know, is praying on behalf of someone else. Like, that's the textbook definition right there.
So if I'm praying for Jesse, I'm interceding on his behalf.
Yeah. So that's what that is. And they're like, hey, we want you to take this over. And I looked at the training director and I said, Bruce, how long can I pray about this? And he looks at me and says, you can have an hour.
An hour's a good amount.
Yeah.
I mean, okay.
Yeah. And so I go and I pray about it, and I keep trying to come up with reasons to say no. And how'd
that work out?
I could not think of a single reason.
See, the Lord wasn't interceding for you.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, God, there's got to be a reason I can't do this. And he's like, nope. So I text Bruce. I'm like, all right, I'll do it.
Fine.
And so they give me a book about intercessory prayer. And I have like a week to come up with a teaching, because not only am I leading intercessory prayer, which is not difficult, but difficult enough.
Right. You have to think about it.
Yeah. You have to think, like, you can't just walk in and be like, this is what we're doing today.
Right. Sometimes the Lord works that way.
Yeah. Sometimes you come up with a whole plan, then you walk in, and the Lord's like, actually, you're praying for this instead.
And you're like, oh, okay, boss.
Cool. I had no plans for that, but all right. Not only was I in charge of that, I was in charge of teaching the next DTS about intercession.
Oh, wow.
So I had to come up with a whole teaching.
That's awesome.
The person that had been in charge of it before me was just taking on bigger responsibilities. They were actually the school leader for that school.
Nice.
So they were like, I can't do intercession and be a school leader, which, that's a lot.
Being a school leader is a lot.
Yeah.
It's super stressful and intense.
So she gives me her teaching that she used and this book and a few other things. And I just spend hours working on this teaching.
That's awesome.
I went into our classroom and I got the whiteboard and I just started like drawing everything out.
Nice.
Just trying to get all my thoughts in some kind of order because I was like too out all over the place.
Your drawings were interceding for you.
Straight up. I think I have some of the pictures on my phone still of just the whiteboard because I'm like, I need to draw this out. I need to stare at it from a good 20 feet away.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I put together this teaching, and then I go and I teach it. And I take no credit for it. It's all God. Just like He gave me the words. He gave me the right things to say. And so that got added to my plate starting in January of this year. And I just kept doing those things. And then May rolls around, and the leader for the secondary school comes up or shoots me a text and is like, hey, I want you to be staff in training for the secondary school. And I really don't want to do it. I took my truck out to the lake and I just sat for like an hour and I'm like, God, please don't make me do this.
Can I take a no for 300?
Yeah, I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I did it. And then it ended up being really awesome.
Yeah.
Really easy, actually.
Good.
Just because I was staff in training, so like it wasn't quite the same level as like full staff.
All the pressure wasn't all on you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it was just an amazing summer just staffing that school. Actually, because of COVID last year, we actually pushed our secondary school back this year. Mm-hmm. And it was during that secondary school that the school leader for the school that's running right now came up to me and asked me to staff that school. And it was more of an instant yes, but I still took some time just to confirm that.
Absolutely.
It was like, yes, I'll do this.
Yeah.
And so we're getting ready for this winter school, and we're having a school staff meeting about, okay, who's going to be our one-on-ones? Who's going to be the ones that we mentor and lead? And we were sitting there praying about it, and I felt really confident about like two of the students that I was supposed to mentor, and I kind of felt like I was supposed to do a third, but I didn't want to do 3 students because, frankly, mentoring students it's a lot of work. Like, it's worthwhile, and now I love it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
at the beginning, I was really freaked out by it. But we were at that meeting, and all of the male staff took 2 right off the bat.
Nice.
There was still 1 more student, and the other guys were not. I was like...
They weren't budging?
Yeah, they weren't budging, and they were like, I really can't do this. And I was just like, I'll do it. And I did it, and it was a little hectic, a little crazy, trying to schedule 3 different meetings, plus a small group, plus everything else I was already doing.
Yeah.
It was hectic, it was crazy, and I found myself later in the school being like, oh, I love doing this. Like, I love meeting with these students. I love talking with them about what their lessons are, about what's going on at home, about everything that's going on, that God's doing in their lives. I found myself loving that, and I didn't expect to. Like, I went into it, like, willing, and I was going to do my best, but I'm like, I don't love this. And then later in the school, I'm like, I love this.
That's so cool. And, that's a healing in itself.
Yeah.
You know, because, like, say you 2 years ago.
Oh,
absolutely.
Well, they wouldn't have let me do that 2 years ago.
That's true. But, like, you would have been like, absolutely not.
Yeah, no, I would have straight up.
No way.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been my exact reaction. Honestly, if you'd have told me 2 years ago that I'd be where I am right now, I would have laughed in your face.
Yeah.
And it's all God.
Yeah.
I take no credit for it whatsoever. So the school starts, and I get about a routine going down, and we're at a school staff meeting the one day, and we're talking about where we're going to send the school on outreach. Yeah. And at this point, the Brazil trip was basically canceled. Like, it's not happening.
No more pushing it. No more postponing.
We kept postponing it. Like, we want to try to do it, but just the COVID situation in Brazil just never got light enough that we could go. And we were talking as a school staff team the one day about, like, okay, where do we send these students? And the school leader's like, hey, this base in Juarez, which actually is the same base in El Paso that was the only other base that showed up.
Really?
Yeah, it's the same base. So God brought that back.
Right? But, full circle moment.
Yeah, legit. I realized it like 3 weeks later. I'm like, oh, I almost went there. And so anyways, the school leader's like, hey, this base here emailed us like saying that there was an outreach opportunity. And as soon as she said that, I just heard God say, you're going to Mexico. And so I didn't want to say anything like in that meeting in front of the whole team. Right. But after the meeting, I go up to the school leader and I'm like, hey, if we do end up sending that team to Mexico, I'm willing to go.
Yeah, I want in.
And then a few weeks later, she pulls me aside and is like, yeah, you're going to Mexico. And we've spent the past couple months just getting ready, and I get to go on outreach next week.
Heck yeah, literally next week, guys. Yeah, like, that's amazing.
In a week, I will be in Mexico.
Like, what day? Because this is going to come out on January 22nd.
Oh, wow. I'll definitely... So when you're hearing this, I'm in Mexico.
He's flat dab in Mexico, enjoying himself, doing ministry.
23 plus 2 kids, but 25
25.
People. Yeah, 25 people. That's counting me. That's counting the other staff that are going, but 25 people.
That's like a classroom.
That's big. This is the biggest team we've ever sent.
Okay, I was like, that's a big group to send. Usually they're like, okay, we have 25, let's split them. That's awesome. And that's exciting.
Yeah. It's just amazing. Like, there's still prep work that needs to be done.
Yeah. Like, we were hanging out today, you guys, and Jesse was still doing prep, like, on his phone as we were hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, hang on, I need like 5 minutes to do a work thing. Like, every, 2 hours?
Yeah, and that's ministry. Yeah. You know, ministry isn't a 9 to 5. Like, that is constant.
No. Ministry is a 25/8 366 job. Like, every moment you've got plus 10 you don't.
God's done a lot.
Yeah.
With you. It's seriously so cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see what this group's going to do. I am much less terrified now than I was when it was first told to me that I was going. God's he's been faithful to be like, yeah, you got this. Yeah. Like, he's going to, like, God's like, I'm already doing it. Like, you just got to walk in the steps I show you.
Yep.
And he's been faithful to do that. And because he's done that, I'm a little terrified, but that's just because I'm going to be. Yeah. I'm really not, like...
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah, legit. Courage is being afraid and saddling up anyways. Yeah. So it's going to be amazing, and I'm super excited. Getting to know the students over the past 3 months, love each of them. Good. And they're an amazing team.
Good.
And I'm super excited to see what God's going to do through them and in them, and all the people we're going to reach.
That's awesome. That's so cool. That makes me so excited. So, y'all, when this comes out, Jesse's going to be in Mexico. So, if y'all are listening to this, just go ahead and lift Jesse and his team up in prayer, because outreach can be intense and stressful and just really exhausting because you're doing ministry constantly.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm looking forward to it. But, yeah, when you're listening to this, please pray for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to Juarez, Mexico. That's right on the border.
Okay.
El Paso, Texas, and Juarez are basically the same city, just divided by a border.
Oh, okay. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. It's been awesome having Jesse here just to talk with us and talk about Jesus and what God's doing in his life and what he's going to keep doing. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Like this video. We're on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And we will see you